Chapter 18. The Cursed Gas Station. Hannah was a college student on a road trip with her friends. They decided to take a shortcut through a remote area and found themselves running low on gas. They spotted an old, run-down gas station and decided to stop. The gas station attendant, a grizzled old man with a sinister grin, filled their tank and offered them a discount. As they drove away, Hannah noticed strange symbols carved into the gas station's walls. That night, they experienced a series of terrifying events. Their car broke down, their phones lost signal, and they saw shadowy figures lurking in the darkness. The air grew thick with an oppressive energy, and they felt as if they were being watched. Desperate for help, they returned to the gas station, only to find it abandoned. The symbols on the walls seemed to glow with an eerie light, and the old man's voice echoed in their minds, warning them of the curse. Hannah and her friends realized that they had been marked by the curse and were doomed to experience endless misfortune. They sought the help of a local shaman who performed a ritual to cleanse them of the curse. The process was arduous, but the shaman succeeded in breaking the curse. The gas station was demolished, and the land was cleansed of its dark energy. Hannah and her friends returned to their normal lives, forever haunted by their encounter with the cursed gas station. Chapter 19. The Ghostly Hitchhiker. Daniel was a long-distance driver who often picked up hitchhikers to keep himself company on long trips. One foggy night, he saw a young woman standing by the side of the road, looking lost and frightened. He pulled over and offered her a ride. She thanked him and got in, her clothes soaked from the rain. As they drove, she remained silent, staring out the window with a distant look in her eyes. When Daniel tried to make conversation, the woman gave brief, cryptic responses. He noticed that her skin was cold to the touch, and her eyes seemed to reflect an inner sadness. As they approached her destination, she suddenly vanished, leaving behind a wet spot on the seat. Daniel was bewildered and decided to investigate. He discovered that the young woman had been a local legend, a hitchhiker who had died in a tragic accident years ago. She was said to appear on foggy nights, seeking a ride to her final destination. Haunted by the encounter, Daniel returned to the spot where he had picked her up and placed flowers in her memory. The ghostly hitchhiker never appeared to him again, but her story remained a chilling reminder of the restless spirits that roamed the roads. Chapter 20. The Highway of Shadows. Lucas was a truck driver who often traveled on a lonely highway known for its eerie reputation. The locals called it the Highway of Shadows, a place where strange and inexplicable events occurred. One night, as Lucas drove down the highway, he noticed shadowy figures moving along the side of the road. His headlights seemed to pierce through them, but they left no trace. The radio emitted static, and he heard faint whispers in the darkness. Suddenly, his truck's engine sputtered and died. Lucas was stranded in the middle of the highway, surrounded by an oppressive silence. The shadowy figures began to close in, their forms becoming more distinct and menacing. Desperate for help, Lucas tried to restart the engine, but it refused to turn over. The shadows pressed closer, their whispers growing louder and more insistent. Lucas felt a cold hand touch his shoulder, and he turned to see a ghostly figure staring at him with hollow eyes. In a panic, Lucas recited a prayer and begged for protection. The shadows seemed to recoil, and the oppressive atmosphere lifted. The truck's engine roared to life, and Lucas sped away, the highway fading into the distance. He never drove on the highway of shadows again, and his story became a legend among truck drivers, a cautionary tale of the dangers that lurked on the haunted roads. Chapter 21: The Poltergeist Rest Stop. Samantha was a long-distance driver who often used rest stops to take a break and stretch her legs. One night, she pulled into a rest stop that seemed unusually quiet and deserted. As she got out of her car, she felt a sudden chill in the air. The rest stop's lights flickered, and she heard faint whispers carried on the wind. She decided to use the restroom, but as she entered, the door slammed shut behind her. The restroom was filled with an oppressive energy, and objects moved on their own. The mirrors fogged up, and she saw ghostly figures in the reflection. Panicked, Samantha tried to leave, but the door wouldn't budge. Suddenly, she felt a cold hand on her shoulder and heard a voice whisper her name. She turned around to see a ghostly figure of a woman, her face twisted in sorrow. The poltergeist seemed to be seeking something, but Samantha couldn't understand what. Desperate to escape, Samantha recited a prayer and begged for help. The poltergeist's grip loosened, and the door finally opened. Samantha ran to her car and drove away, the rest stop fading into the distance. She later learned that the rest stop had been the site of a tragic accident, and the spirits of the victims still haunted the area. Samantha's encounter with the poltergeist rest stop became a chilling story, a reminder of the restless spirits that roamed the highways. Chapter 22: The Phantom Road. Brian was a truck driver who often took the same route through a remote mountain pass. One night, he decided to take a different road that promised a shorter journey. As he drove, he noticed that the road was poorly maintained and seemed to disappear into the fog. Despite his misgivings, Brian continued driving, but the road grew narrower and more treacherous. He saw ghostly figures in the fog, their forms shifting and disappearing. The air grew thick with an oppressive energy, and he felt as if he was being watched. Suddenly, the road vanished, and Brian found himself driving on a narrow ledge with no way to turn around. The ghostly figures closed in, their whispers filling his mind with fear and confusion. Desperate to escape, Brian recited a prayer and begged for protection. The ghostly figures seemed to retreat, and the road reappeared. He drove back to the main highway, the phantom road fading into the fog. Brian never took that route again, and his story became a legend among truck drivers, a haunting reminder of the dangers of venturing into the unknown.